Thank you for tuning in to the Athletes Portal Show. I am your host, Keith Williams. I'm a father of two talented athletes, a basketball player and a track athlete. The Athletes Portal is a podcast show about what's going on in youth sports. We interview the community that leads and supports the success of student athletes in the classroom, on the field, and life after sports. And that community includes coaches, high school, AU, college, trainers, mental health professionals, NIL agents, and most important, parents who've raised successful student athletes. Make sure you tune in because these guests are really going to give you great information that can help student athletes succeed in today's world. No theory here, folks, just reality. Well, let's get the show started. Today's guest is a basketball skills trainer, assistant coach at Mount Vernon varsity basketball team, and owner of The Transition. He trains high school, college, and pro athletes. He grew up in Marietta, attended McEachern High School, briefly attended Hofstra University in New York, had humble beginnings in the world of training, coaching and training kids for free and then for $5. During his journey, one of the dads of a player he was training connected him with the coach of Cabrillo College, where he played for 4 years despite never playing high school basketball. My guest is someone who loves to learn and during his free time is focused on business and his creativity. Please welcome Korey Harris to the Athletes Portal Show. Korey, how are you today?
Man, I'm great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. You sound like a professional, like this ain't your first rodeo, man. I love it.
No problem. No, I've done this before and I really enjoy it. And I'm so excited to have you on. On a bit of a not so positive note, recently there was a football player who played in the NFL who committed suicide, Rondell Moore. He was 25. I believe he'd had some injuries and he was struggling to make it back in the league. It's tough in the world of sports, recreating yourself because we're more than just athletes. And I think you understand that because you work with a lot of young athletes. How do we help these athletes and young men, because this young man was 25, how do we help them to not just identify as an athlete?
Yeah, I think the most important word that you used was identity. We were talking earlier before the show, and then now that word, it just screams volumes when it comes to, how we're preparing our athletes, whether they're the kids of the parents who are listening here, or if you're a coach and you're listening to this podcast, like how are we equipping them as people to understand that they have a role and they have a purpose that's bigger than sport? For me, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household with a single mom who was a very masterful woman when it came time to build me up from an identity perspective. I would have loved to have both parents there, but she made it her intention every single day to make sure that I understood that I was bigger than my surroundings. I was bigger than what someone said about me, or I was more than just what my hobbies were. And I think that especially men in today's society, they feel the pressure and the weight of comparisons, of social media, of having people from around the world who 10, 20 years ago wouldn't even know who they are, wouldn't be able to contact them, and now they can have an opinion on them, and those opinions can reach that individual, that athlete's eyes and ears. And so I pray for the young man's family and his friends who were left behind. Very unfortunate situation, but I think for all of the young listeners, as well as the parents and coaches listening, we need to do a better job of just making sure that we're checking in and that we're paying attention to our athletes, because again, like even the hardest working, most successful, high achieving athlete could be dealing with an identity crisis. That athlete who has only done one thing their whole career, their whole young life, which is play, sports, be a part of a group, be a part of a team. Do they even know how to exist outside of that construct? And I'm sure you went through it, Keith. I went through it. When the ball stopped rolling, I was left trying to pick up the pieces and figure out, like, who am I now? Like, what am I about? What am I going to do? How am I going to impact the world? And it's not always like, picking up a whistle in coaching or staying involved in sports, but I would say, number one, you have to have faith in something bigger than yourself. For me, it's my faith in Yahweh. I believe that when he created man, that he gave them strict instructions. He said in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28, that they should be fruitful, they should multiply, they should subdue the earth and have dominion. And so if I'm being fruitful, that means that I'm making every situation that I'm in right now better than it was before I got here. If I'm multiplying, it means I'm using my creativity and my God-given ability to make sure that I'm not stagnant and I'm not just a consumer taking in things. Then if I'm dominating, it means that I'm giving my best. I'm giving my effort, every single day. And if I do that, there's no way I can be depressed. There's no way that I could, contemplate not being here. Of course, those thoughts might come, but they won't remain very long. So I think, we need to also not judge our athletes based on just their performance, but be people who are consistent, who are steadfast, and like, yeah, you might have sucked today, or you didn't play well, you didn't win that game, or you got cut, right? But life goes on,
Yeah.
So again, I just pray for those connected to not only that gentleman, but anybody, who's dealt with suicide, because it's a terrible thing.
Definitely. And moving on here, let's talk about like the path for these student athletes.
Yes, sir.
Nowadays it's not the same path as we had growing up. A lot of things have changed. And for example, we have AU, we have personal training, we have high school, we have prep, we have post grad, we have JUCO. So for the player trying to get to college, what do you think would be a good path nowadays? Let's say the person who is not a highly ranked player, maybe it's an undersized player, it's a regular player, it's that person that doesn't necessarily have a bunch of opportunities. How do they balance, high school, AU, and personal training? What do you think is a good, because you've seen this.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
think is some suggestions or advice and guidance you might give that player?
Yeah, I like the fact that you were very specific, right? You said the undersized player. That helps me to better understand who I'm dealing with, right? Let's say, for instance, this is a 7th grade, 8th grade kid. Maybe they're 5'2", 5'5", and everybody else is starting to hit their growth spurt. Well, at that age, and that grade level, being in middle school specifically in the state of Georgia, you can still reclass and not receive any type of blowback where you lose a year of eligibility for high school basketball. So, a lot of parents are becoming more educated to the opportunity, number one, to reclass their son or daughter, just to give them a year to develop. I read a book, it had to have been over 10 years ago, called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And extremely influential book in my young coaching journey and also my playing journey. But it talked a lot about how those who are specialists or who have mastered or reached a high level of success in sports, academia, and different industries, they're not there by accident. They're not just these like 1%ers that God touched and they're just different than everyone. Set of events that happened. And so I take from that book to this particular topic of, if I have an athlete, a 7th or 8th grader, who is 1 year older, right? Now when he or she competes against the majority of kids who are in their right grade, they now have an edge. That edge then leads them to then perform a little bit better because their brains are now more developed than the average young man or young woman. Their bodies have an extra 12 months of development. Their emotional state is going to be 12 months ahead, or at least, more based, because the average kid is immature. The average kid has a shorter attention span, but you give them 12 months, they're going to be night and day different. You see a kid, go ahead.
Yeah, and if I could just interject for a second, I think also what I really wanted to figure out is more for the high school kid who
Okay.
now
No
has
problem.
fewer options because
Gotcha.
they're a little bit more in a bind because middle school, you're right, they do have time and I agree with you, but that high school kid now who has to decide between do I take some time off AAU and put more time into training? Do I go to a post-grad program? Do I go to a JUCO program? Because the clock
It's
ticking more for the high
right.
schooler than the middle schooler. So that's what I was thinking.
No problem. For the high school player, you're right. Their backs are a little bit against the wall, especially with players coming in from overseas. Now you've seen a couple of G League guys who are coming down and now they're playing college basketball again. A
Yes.
lot of parents have to shake the old archaic mindset of post-grad education and JUCO means that you failed or that you just aren't going to ever be good enough to play NCAA college basketball, right? Or college sports in general. When I was growing up, if a kid went JUCO, we thought that kid got arrested, had a baby, couldn't get grades, went to jail. Like JUCO was where, the rejects went. And, I think some people are still living in that mindset. The thought process hasn't caught up. Nowadays, I believe it's the best route. I think if you have a high school player who has played 4 years of solid high school basketball, they've got some film, they've got some stats, maybe they got the traditional huddle profile. If you want to give them the opportunity after not receiving any scholarships, throughout just their regular 4-year journey in high school, then you should be looking at a post-grad opportunity. And then from there, after that year, you might still want to consider a year or two of junior college. Number one, the way it's looking right now, the eligibility clock for the NCAA, they're still trying to figure out if those years are going to count against the players or if they're still going to be awarded all 4 years. So that could play to your advantage where you have now maybe 3 years after high school, 1 in post-grad and then 2 in junior college to get ahead of the pack. So you're 2021 now instead of 17 or 18 going into your freshman year. Then on top of that, at a post-grad, like Keith, your son is going to get the type of resources that they're not getting in regular high school, because in high school you're in classes for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. You go post-grad, you're most likely going to take 2 to 4 hours of classes a day. Some days you might not have any classes, but those classes are going to be very, very specific. It's going to be geared towards preparing you for college. Then outside of that, training, yes, practicing, playing, and everyone you're practicing and playing against, they're on a higher level as well, because they're after the same goal. Some of the kids you played against in high school, they didn't want to play in college. They weren't going to play in college even if they wanted to. So now the competition level is higher. And then you think about those junior college years. Well, where are college coaches going anyway? They're going into the portal and they're grabbing kids with prep and JUCO experience. You could have an associate's degree after 2 years. You've played against maybe some D1 guys that came down and are playing on the JUCO level before they go back up. Maybe your college coach on the JUCO level has Division I experience. Maybe your post-grad coach has Division I coaching experience. Yes. So these are things that you don't get in the traditional high school sense. When it comes to AAU, granted, AAU is a beautiful resource. I'm never going to say that AAU is the bane of, existence for basketball. I'm not on that bandwagon. But I also am not a fan of just the way that a lot of AAU coaches and organizations have almost brainwashed parents to think that if they miss one session, one live event, their kid can just never make it in basketball. So parents are operating normally on fixed budgets because they may have multiple kids. They have different responsibilities. They may be paying for the kid to go to private school. So yes, you can't just pay a trainer $5,000, AAU organization $5,000. A lot of times you're trying to make it work. So you have to choose. And I would say, even for those of us in my world, we also are not serving the parents and players the best that we can, because we are operating on an archaic mindset where athletes come and work with us and we're not giving them any insight into anything other than just skill work, drill work. We're not teaching them how to take care of their bodies from a nutritional standpoint. We don't show them recovery techniques. We don't show them how to get stronger. The difference between a Division I athlete and D2 normally is just body type. The difference between a Division I athlete and someone who just doesn't play college basketball at all, 100% is body type. There are guys and girls right now on the Division I level that can't make a left-hand layup, that can't make an open jump shot. But physically, they can defend, they can run, jump. They have they got the raw tools to learn the skill set. So if you want your child to have a chance and you're saying they're already undersized, but maybe you can't make them grow taller, but you can sure get them on some creatine. You can get them on a weightlifting program, get them some vitamins, get them with a good strength coach who's going to give them insight in how to understand their body, have them train. AAU should be the extra supplement, because I don't think if they're already behind the 8 ball in just all these other areas that AAU is going to be the deciding factor.
Let me just jump in for a sec. I'll tell you one thing that I see is that there are AAU tournaments that are not live where the coaches are not going to show up, and I feel those are tournaments you can miss. although it's not going to sit well with your coach, but you're better off training because when you go on these tournaments, you're missing all the time to train because you're in a hotel, you're at the gym. So you're missing all this training time for a tournament where nobody's there. So I'm not bashing AAU, but I am saying some tournaments might not be necessary. I think that some of the tournaments you should only really go to, and I know I'm probably going to get bashed for this, the tournaments where the college coaches are.
That's
Maybe
what
one or
you're
two where the college coaches are not, but you lose all that training time.
100%. I think it's based on the situation. So, like, if I have an athlete who has already started receiving interest and offers from college, it doesn't even have to be Division One. It could be D2 because maybe my kid's level is only D2, right? Maybe my kid at his peak right now is a junior college player or NAIA level player, right? It's important to know that too, like to just be honest and objective. If
Yes.
this is the level of my current athlete, I actually am not even worried about getting in front of every single college coach because my situation for the kid I'm talking about right now, we know where we're going. We might have even like figured out where we're going to commit. Now, if I have an athlete who doesn't know where they're going, doesn't have opportunities yet on the college level, and we're fighting for that, we're trying to earn or garner that, then we got to be on the EYBL circuit or Adidas, it used to be called Adidas Gauntlet, now it's 3SSB. If it's Puma, like whichever circuit you find yourself on and they have these sessions, these live periods, cool, we got to be there. But it's understanding like what's my goal? Like I'm currently working with a player who's really, really good. He's got Power 5 offers from all over the country. He can go anywhere he wants, but he's got some lingering injuries and he has a need physically to improve so that he can in the long run be a complete player. I'm telling his parents right now, like, you guys need to think about shutting it down and missing certain events because you want to play in front of these college coaches. These college coaches don't want to see you on a bad wheel.
That's
They
true.
don't
Yeah.
they don't want to see you like you can't even get up and down the court, or God forbid the injury turns into something else because your body is a chain and everything's connected. His situation is one where he can afford to miss because the question will be, well, what was going on? He just needed rest. Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing him at the next one.
Yeah.
Versus,
No information sometimes is better than bad
exactly.
information. Hey, wanted to ask you, you guys with your training, you're training high school players, college pro players, and what I like is you bring them together. You're kind of forming a community. How did you come up with this, and how has that impacted high school players?
So number one, we didn't have this type of a community, I feel. Maybe it existed and I didn't know about it, but we didn't have this when I was growing up. So it was very hard. It was almost like a secret society. If
Sure.
you stumbled upon, where all the pros were playing in the summer times, or where a lot of college players were working out. I think if you were like one of those players, you knew, of course, right?
That's
You
true.
find your way, but it wasn't publicized and it wasn't anything where it's like, hey, welcome, like bring your friend, it was nothing like that. So also, even when I was, starting my business, it still kind of felt that way, where it was like more like cliques. So I saw that the AAU organizations, they had, their own thing where their best players would always be together, play, train, and just kind of have a community within themselves. High schools that had really big programs like the Wheelers of Georgia, AAU-wise, it was Game Elite or the Atlanta Celtics. You could kind of see that they had like almost like a fraternity. I used to train out of a rec center called the Ron Anderson Rec. And this, in my opinion, is one of the most legendary recreational centers in the nation. Jaylen Brown, Zion Williamson, Sharif Cooper, Isaac Okoro, Colin Sexton, Darius Perry, like whoever you want to think of down the line has been in this gym, playing in open runs, practicing for AAU. And I saw them all because when I was 18 years old, I would be working out there. I would play with the old guys. I would play with the guys my age. But then when I would train my clients, I would try to get in there before it got busy because it was first come, first serve to get a basket. And so when the AAU teams would be in there, I would be the only person that didn't get kicked out because I would ask the coaches, could I sit and watch how they ran their practices? So I used to see all types of legendary players and coaches interacting, and I was just a fly on the wall, and I saw how the older guys talk to the younger guys. The NBA players like J.J. Hickson or Josh Smith, they would talk to the high school kids and they would give them game, and the coaches would just kind of be the ones orchestrating it. They didn't like
Yes.
intervene. They just would kind of foster the environment. And so when I started training, I didn't have the means to do that. I didn't have like professional clients at first. I had 5 and 6 year olds. But when I thought about my goal for my business, I said that's what I want to be about. I want to create almost like a fraternity where if you work with the transition, you get exposed to the transitional process of, hey, I'm a middle schooler going to high school, where you're going to get exposed to what the high school system is like. If I'm a high schooler going to college, we're going to expose you to the level that high school players are expected to carry themselves at, and then so on and so forth. You're an international pro, you're going to be exposed to a EuroLeague guy because you're down on this A2 level in Greece. Well, this is what it takes to play for Panathinaikos, and they play in front of thousands of fans every week. So like I didn't really have like a structure in mind. I think it began just with like organic runs where I would have like pro runs and college players would be allowed to come. And then I started seeing like it became a little popularized and guys were like almost like on waiting lists and asking me to come. And then, I'm like, all right, now I got to figure out a way to structure this. So you separate it, but then you also create the cohesion where you work and try to give the pros a reason to come. Now they feel happy to come and talk to the younger guys. They're not so upset that they're playing with a younger guy if they know that they're the mentor,
And I'll tell you something about that. Yeah, I'll jump in. Sorry to jump in.
Sure.
Talon Cooper. Am I saying his name right? Talon Cooper allowed Jackson to follow him around while he was preparing for the NBA. And what he doesn't realize is that we admire him so much for that small act of kindness that I follow him now.
I forgot about that.
Because he was so nice to let my son just let Jackson tag a high schooler, along with this guy preparing for the NBA draft. And I think that you've changed lives. You don't realize how much that impacts these young players. So I just, I thank you for that first. But, I'm so grateful for the guys that you have. Even Isaac Okoro, these guys, he's an NBA player and he's letting these high school guys like Jackson and I think Colin tag along and experience what it's like to see an NBA player train and prepare. That's an eye opener for a high school kid. And I think that, that is a great thing that you're doing. I think it's a game changer.
Well, they kicked Isaac's butt that day. I remember that. I forgot about Talon, but Jackson and Colin were on a mission when they came to Cleveland. I brought them to the practice facility. And I was like, man, just dog him. You know what I mean? Like chasing over every screen, contest every shot. Y'all aren't going to get any offense today. Y'all just going to play defense for the whole workout. And they were like, all right, cool. Like we get to be here. Darius Garland's over there. Isaac, we're in a la-la land. This is amazing. So I said, okay. Man, Isaac was dying. Full court press, 94 feet. Colin walling up in the paint. Like it was amazing. That was a good day. But that's cool. I didn't know that, it made that big of an impact on him. I'm happy.
It does. I really appreciate it. Hey, what do you think is common challenge for for high school players who are trying to get to the college ranks? What do you see? You're coaching at Mount Vernon, you're seeing kids who have ambitions of playing college. What do you think is holding them back? What are their challenges and how do you address that?
Number one is the home environment. That's the biggest obstacle, in my opinion. Elite families produce elite athletes. If the parents haven't seen it, done it, they have to be humble enough to connect and listen to people who have, and also be willing to ask questions rather than just freestyle. And sometimes they project, philosophies onto the athlete, and then as a coach, you're working against that. Like you're trying to undo some of this stuff, and you end up wasting years on things that are like frivolous. Like, I need a kid to just commit to giving maximum effort, but maybe at home the kid is hearing that they should be playing more. Well, the reason why they not playing more is because they need to give maximum effort. So, number one, having that alignment between, and not all coaches are good coaches, so it's not always, the fault of the family, but in my experience, the biggest obstacle, number one obstacle, is the home life. And,
I agree.
Sometimes it's as simple as like just asking the athlete, like, is everything okay at home? And then you might find out they're struggling. And that has nothing to do with the parents' like philosophy. That could just be like, it's tough and they need a helping hand. I grew up in that. So I would say whether it's, the fault of the parents or it's just, demographics, you got to like look to the home first. And then number two, I would say that young high school athletes just don't, like my earlier point, they don't understand the physical demand of playing college sports. So they don't take the weight room serious enough.
Yes.
They don't take rest, as serious as they should. And they don't even like educate themselves on recovery and nutrition. They just don't even know like how much they should be sleeping or how much they should be eating or what they should be eating. They just eat and they just sleep however they do, And so now you are trying to prepare them for a level that has demands and a standard without even like a clear expectation, right? So, we try to give them examples like, okay, here's what an average college point guard looks like. Show them a picture, or bring a college point guard to them live, like to just talk to them if you can. If you can't, pictures and video is fine, but you got to make it like real, and by position, do that. And then the last thing I would say on that particular question is it's the academics. Like, depending on your demographic, again, like if you're in a private school like Mount Vernon where I am, that's really not an issue most of the time. But the majority of kids go to public schools. And, if they want to play competitively, at the next level, they have to be qualifiers. And there's not enough emphasis put on not just qualifying, but like also putting yourself in a higher bracket where you can qualify for every college that's out there versus I got a 2.3 GPA, so at least I can go. But like, well, some schools, they don't care about the minimum. They don't even take anyone below 3.5 or 3.3 or 3.8 or, you got to know that type of stuff. So giving your best effort in the classroom, I think also opens the door to play D3, D2, whatever level it is.
I agree. Also talk about relationships, because one of the things I have noticed, and I'll tell you, Jay Sloan is great at this, Coach Sloan. Talk about the power of relationships as it pertains to the recruiting process for opening doors.
Well, relationships are more valuable than money. I think we know that as adults, but when it comes to the world of athletics, I think that we forget, right, that that's also an industry, that's also a platform that's built on who knows who. So it's not enough to just like have an Instagram page or a Facebook or make highlights on YouTube. Those things I think are the bare minimum. I think that's the floor. But it's like, how do people know you? Like if I speak Keith Williams' name in a room and Keith is not present, like what gets said about him? What adjectives are we using to describe him? If it's positive, then now anything connected to him has a better chance of being, given an opportunity to thrive versus a negative. So I think a lot of parents don't understand that, like, just even how you conduct yourself on the sidelines is speaking volumes to whoever is watching your kid, right?
Yeah.
Like when coaches are recruiting kids, they're also recruiting families. They're paying attention to that. So now that potential relationship with that kid could be benefited or it could be destroyed based on how the family is conducting themselves. And then the next thing is like, you as a parent have to understand your kid is never gonna like pick up the phone and just text a coach, call a coach, or email coaches unless they like have been taught that, right?
Yes, that's true.
My mom didn't know anything about basketball, but my mom was a cold caller. Like my mom had a lot of jobs growing up. So I saw my mom like raise her hand and ask for help or reach out to people and extend herself. So of course, when I'm trying to play college basketball, I have no problem saying I'm going to email every coach in the country, right? Because that's what I'm seeing. So like as a parent, you have to want not more than your kid, but you have to want them success to a point where like they see it and they feel like, okay, there's nothing I'm unwilling to do because I know like I've got the support system that doesn't just believe in my ability from a playing perspective, but they also like have equipped me from a character perspective and from the soft skills to where now like I can extend myself. I think parents need to understand the power of evaluators. They need to understand the power of the head coach that coaches their child currently, not just try to build relationships with the coaches where you want your kid to go. Because if you are screaming F-bombs at your kid's current high school coach, that coach is probably not going to want to vouch
Yeah.
for your kid, even if they're talented, they probably just won't even have it in them to like extend themselves, right?
Yes.
And then, of course, like you have to know, and you made a good point earlier, you got to know what are the right events to be at.
That's true.
Because if you're just playing in every tournament, you're going to meet certain people that have no value
Mhm.
because it's a low value event. But if you're putting your kid in the right positions, knowing like, okay, this particular team, they have kids who have actually gone on to the next level. So that's proof of concept,
Yes.
right? Or this coach has coached on the level. So that's
Yes.
also proof of concept and
Yes.
connection there, right? It could be indirect, but it's still a connection. Then now when you're playing in these events, I got the right type of coach or coaching staff on the side of my child. We're in the position, we're in the place, we're in the atmosphere now where there's going to be other kids of the same level of where I want my kid to go. Meaning there are families and parents who also have insight and understanding, right? So like all of the things, even as much as choosing the school your kid plays for in high school now
Yes.
is so key. Like that wasn't a thought when I was growing up, but like now that even is something that should be studied. Like where are the best places to position your ninth grader, 10th grader, 11th grader? So I could go on and on. There's many ways to create valuable networks within the game of basketball, but I think just starting there, like within your current school situation, coaching staff, what events do you have the opportunity to take your child to? And then also just like conducting yourself in a certain manner, right? Understanding if you appear thirsty and you're just trying to promote your kid, you also can be a turnoff. I think
That's
that's
true.
an unspoken thing that needs to be like brought to the forefront because we have some parents who are running certain coaches and certain scouts away because they're not even objective about their own kids' abilities. They don't even know their kids' flaws. They can't
Self-awareness.
see
It's
self-awareness.
true.
Self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Korey, I want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show. Please share how people can get in touch with you. And folks, I also want to say we are going to have a follow up with Korey because there's a lot of great information that Korey has to share, and we are going to do a number 2 version of the show if that's okay with you, Korey.
Please, let's do
Yeah.
it, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys
Please
can
share
can
how people can
contact me.
find you.
Yeah, you can contact me pretty simply. My website, my landing page is transitionbball.com, transitionbball.com. I am going to come out with a brand new website within the next couple of weeks. But right now that one's still live. My email address is hello@transitionbball.com. And then, of course, I'm on social media at The Transition on Instagram, on Twitter, and my YouTube channel is also called The Transition. I'm always uploading workout videos and all type of great content there. I am not the best with text message, but if you email me, I'll get back to you within 24 hours. So hopefully, one of those works for you.
Definitely. Korey, thank you again.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Keith.
And
I really
continued
appreciate it.
success and good luck in the playoffs.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
want you guys
Appreciate
to
it.
get that state championship.
Yo, we need that. We got to come away with that one, man. That's what we do this for.
Definitely.
Yes, sir.